Hey, Infidelity Love Lies fam. All right, gather round because what I'm about to spill isn't just a story. This is my life completely blown to bits, then painstakingly rebuilt. It's a confession, a warning, and a testament to what happens when you cross a woman who thought she had it all. Imagine this. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the phone. The voice on the other end was cold, clinical. Ma'am, you're under arrest for aggravated assault and leaving the scene of a hit and run. It was a Tuesday. An ordinary Tuesday. Minutes before, I was singing along to the radio thinking about takeout. Now flashing blue and red lights painted my car in a sinister glow. 2 grim-faced officers were at my window. My carefully constructed life, built with blood, sweat, and strategic investments, was about to implode. But I haven't done anything, I stammered, my voice cracking. We have a witness, Ms. Thompson, the officer said, devoid of sympathy. And evidence. Step out of the vehicle, please. The cold steel of the handcuffs biting into my wrists was the first jolt of reality. The back of the police cruiser smelled faintly of antiseptic and despair. The precinct was a blur of harsh lights and muted conversations. My lawyer, frantic and incredulous, was already there thanks to a desperate call from my best friend Rachel. But even she looked baffled. The evidence against me was oddly convincing. Too convincing. And then the phone calls. To him. Ethan. My Ethan. The man who filled my life with light, who promised me a future I'd only dared to dream of. The man who had been my everything. His phone went straight to voicemail, again, and again. Not a single text, not a single callback. He had vanished, just like that. Days blurred into a living hell. Interrogation rooms, legal jargon, the crushing weight of an accusation I couldn't comprehend. The shame was a physical presence, a suffocating blanket. Every time I called Ethan, nothing. The silence screamed louder than any accusation. Had he abandoned me? Was this some twisted test? My mind spun in a vortex of confusion and terror. Finally, Rachel, a force of nature, even when terrified, managed to get me out on bail. I stumbled out of the precinct, blinking in the harsh daylight, feeling like a ghost in my own skin. My phone vibrated, an unknown number. I answered, my hand trembling. Emma, a soft voice asked, a woman's voice. My name is Lily. We need to talk. Lily. The name registered a faint, unsettling echo from Ethan's past. An ex he'd mentioned once vaguely casually, but there was nothing casual about the woman standing before me now, her dark hair elegant, her eyes holding a strange, unsettling blend of pity and steel. Her hand rested protectively over her visibly rounded belly. I know about the accident, she said, her voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial whisper. And I know you're innocent. But if you want this to go away, if you want to avoid a massive scandal, a public trial, and the utter ruin of your reputation, you'll pay us. A substantial amount to keep quiet, to disappear. She held out 2 documents. My breath hitched. A marriage certificate, Ethan's name, her name, and a date that was less than 6 months ago. A date that was before he even met me. My world tilted on its axis. And then an ultrasound photo. A tiny, blurry image of a fetus. I'm pregnant. It's Ethan's. We're married. We've been planning this for a long time. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. My perfect life, my perfect love exploded into a million shards of glass, revealing a meticulously constructed horror show. Every sweet word, every thoughtful gesture, every grand declaration of love suddenly twisted into something grotesque. He wasn't building an empire for us. He was building it with her. On my dime. The betrayal was a physical blow. A cold, hard knot of disgust and fury began to coil in my stomach. The police set up his sudden disappearance, Lily's chilling demands. It was all too meticulously orchestrated, but still a sliver of desperate hope clung to the wreckage of my mind. A voice whispered, this can't be real. He couldn't be this monster. The unraveling. That sliver of denial, that desperate hope clung to me for days, even as Lily's calls and texts escalated her demands for money, becoming more insistent, more threatening. I was a wreck, barely eating, barely sleeping. The police investigation was ongoing, the threat of charges still hanging over my head like a guillotine. My apartment felt like a prison, my phone a constant source of anxiety. But Rachel, my unwavering best friend, refused to let it go. She was my anchor, my rock fueled by a righteous fury on my behalf. While I was caught in a horrifying limbo, she was digging quietly, relentlessly, using every contact she had, every obscure online form, every bit of detective work she could muster. She wasn't just trying to clear my name, she was trying to find out who was behind this and why. She sensed a deeper, more sinister game at play. Then one afternoon her call came. Her voice was tight with suppressed rage, almost vibrating with controlled fury. Emma, she said, cutting straight to the chase. No pleasantries. I found them. Found who? I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, like a dead battery. I was too tired, too numb to even feel curiosity. I just wanted it all to end. Ethan and Lily, at the hospital. The OB-GYN wing. Her voice cracked with the weight of the words. My breath hitched. The air in the room suddenly felt impossibly heavy. They were laughing, Emma, holding hands. He looked so happy. He even rubbed her belly. Like a loving husband. Like they were planning their whole damn future together like a normal loving couple. The dam broke. The last fragile piece of my denial shattered into a million irreparable shards, reflecting a horrifying, undeniable truth. The hope I'd clung to, the desperate wish that it was all a terrible, elaborate misunderstanding, evaporated in a blinding flash of incandescent rage and soul-crushing despair. The image she painted, so vivid, so cruelly normal, slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the hardwood floor, the dial tone a mournful hum in the sudden echoing silence of my apartment. The world spun. The betrayal wasn't just a concept anymore. It was a physical ache, a visceral pain that resonated deep in my bones, a cold, hard knot of disgust and fury. It wasn't just him, it was both of them. A calculated, sickening conspiracy. A perfectly orchestrated ballet of deceit with me as the unwitting lead. I sank to the floor, hot tears streaming down my face, but this time they weren't tears of confusion or sorrow or even fear. They were tears of pure, unadulterated fury. A cold burning fire ignited within me, a sharp, almost terrifying lucidity. It was like waking up from a long, distorted dream, a nightmare of my own making. I saw everything with stark clarity now. The perfectly tailored gifts, the evasive answers about marriage, the insistence on separating business from pleasure, the sudden, inexplicable legal trouble. It wasn't love. It was a transaction. A meticulously planned, financially motivated con. And I, the intelligent, self-sufficient Emma at 35 years old, had been the mark. The perfect, unsuspecting target. But they had underestimated me. They had underestimated a woman scorned, a woman betrayed to her core. They had mistaken my pain for weakness. They had mistaken my shock for surrender. This wasn't just about getting my money back. This was about reclaiming my dignity. This was about dismantling their entire house of cards, brick by painstaking brick. This was about making sure they never, ever did this to anyone else. Rachel. I said, my voice surprisingly steady, almost eerily calm despite the storm raging inside me. I picked up the phone. I need your help. All of it. We're going to burn their world down. The target. Let me tell you a little about Emma. That's me. I'm 35 years old. For most of my life, I've been fiercely independent, financially self-sufficient, and I've always prided myself on being smart. Really smart. I built my career from the ground up navigating complex financial markets with a sharp mind and an even sharper intuition. I'd seen it all. Shady deals, manipulative tactics, people trying to pull one over on others. I thought I was immune to emotional manipulation, that my intellect and maturity would shield me from such basic cons. I'd seen friends fall into bad relationships, watched from the sidelines, smug in my own perceived wisdom. I prided myself on being too astute, too grounded, too practical to ever be swept away by a sweet-talking charmer. My past relationships had been stable, predictable, safe. Nothing that set the world on fire, but nothing that threatened to burn it down either. I thought I knew exactly who I was and what I deserved. I had my apartment, my career, my carefully curated circle of friends. I was happy, or at least content, until Ethan. He was the variable I hadn't accounted for, the one thing that broke through my defenses. He was 28, 7 years younger than me, but he carried himself with an old soul maturity, a wisdom beyond his years. His beauty was undeniable, striking almost classical features, a lean, athletic build, and those captivating hazel eyes that seemed to look right into your soul. But it wasn't just his looks. It was the way he spoke, a low, melodic voice that could soothe or excite with equal ease. He had this uncanny ability to mirror your emotions, to anticipate your thoughts, to make you feel utterly, completely understood. He was a master of charm, a connoisseur of human desire. He moved through the world with an effortless grace, always knowing the right thing to say, the perfect gesture to make. He was in every single way the ideal partner I hadn't even consciously realized I was looking for. He didn't just listen. He heard me in a way no one ever had. He wasn't just attentive, he was tailored. Every gift he gave me, every thoughtful gesture felt like it was plucked directly from my innermost desires, from conversations I barely remembered having, from preferences I hadn't even voiced. He'd remember the way I took my coffee, the obscure author I mentioned once, my subtle aversion to cilantro. It was intoxicating. It was like he had access to my internal monologue, a direct line to my soul. Our dates were always perfect, always an experience. Lavish dinners at exclusive, impossible-to-book restaurants, impromptu weekend getaways to quaint coastal towns, private shopping sprees where he'd pick out exactly what I secretly wanted, but would never have bought for myself. He'd open doors, pull out chairs, anticipate my every need before I even knew I had it. He made me feel seen, cherished, adored. It was the kind of love story you read about in novels, the kind that makes you think, finally, this is it. My friends, even Rachel, my perpetually skeptical best friend who saw through everyone's bullshit, were completely charmed. Emma. Rachel would say, her eyes wide with genuine surprise, he's been perfect. He's everything you ever said you wanted. She saw the glow in my eyes, the lightness in my step. I was happier than I'd ever been. He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was my confidant, my cheerleader, my escape from the relentless demands of my career. He made me believe in a kind of love I thought only existed in movies. He talked about our future, vague but sparkling with promise. A life together filled with adventure and shared dreams. Then came the subtle shifts. The conversations about our future, always initiated by me, would gently veer off course. When I'd bring up marriage, he'd get this distant, almost wistful look in his eyes. Darling, he'd say, his voice a soft caress, I want nothing more than to spend my life with you. But I just need to get my work stable first. I want to build an empire for us, for our future, before I ask you to commit to forever. He'd talk about financial security, about not wanting me to worry about a single thing, about wanting to provide the very best. I want to be able to give you everything you deserve, Emma. And right now my focus needs to be on building that foundation. It made sense, right? A responsible, ambitious man who wanted to secure our financial future before taking that big step. I admired his drive, his foresight. It only made me love him more. It wasn't about him avoiding commitment. It was about him being too committed, too dedicated to our shared future. That's how I rationalized it. That's what he made me believe. His startup, Phoenix Capital, was his great passion. He spoke about it with an almost evangelical fervor. It's going to revolutionize investment, he'd say, his eyes shining with conviction. It's not just about money, Emma. It's about empowering people, about building something truly impactful. He'd bring home glossy brochures, show me complex financial models on his laptop, explain the intricate algorithms he claimed to have developed. It all sounded incredibly legitimate, incredibly impressive. He was always on calls, always sketching out diagrams, always radiating an aura of intense, brilliant focus. He worked tirelessly late into the night, often sleeping at his office, which only further cemented my belief in his dedication. He was always networking, always pushing forward, always a step ahead. One evening over a candlelit dinner at our favorite Italian spot, he pitched me an idea that in hindsight should have sent alarm bells screaming through my head. But at the time, it felt like the ultimate declaration of trust. Emma, he said, holding my gaze with those captivating eyes, I want you to be a part of this, not just emotionally, but financially. I want you to invest 30% of the shares in Phoenix Capital. It's not about the money, love. It's about us building something together, a legacy, a true partnership. And it's important to me that we keep our personal lives and our business separate for clarity, for respect. It protects our relationship. Emma ensures our love remains pure, untainted by business squabbles. He spun it so beautifully, so convincingly. It felt like a testament to our bond, a sign of his absolute trust in me. He wanted me to be his equal, his partner in every sense of the word. He said it would solidify my place in his future, a direct, tangible stake in the empire he was building for us. And like an idiot, blinded by what I thought was love, I bought in. Hook, line, and sinker, I transferred a substantial portion of my savings, a significant chunk of my carefully built financial security, into Phoenix Capital. I told myself it was an investment in our future, a shared dream. A beautiful testament to our partnership, a smart financial move even for me. I even convinced Rachel it was a sound opportunity, a testament to how deeply I had fallen, how completely I had been duped. The counterattack. Rachel was a force of nature. Once she channeled her anger into action, she was unstoppable. Her loyalty was absolute, her resolve unshakable. She had a network of contacts I didn't even know existed. Forensic accountants, private investigators, even a former police officer who now worked in corporate security and owed her a significant favor. She became my co-conspirator, my strategic partner in vengeance. We started digging. Not just for dirt, but for the truth. Every lie, every deception, every manipulation, every subtle thread of their elaborate scheme. We spent countless nights poring over documents, tracing digital footprints, making discreet inquiries. The initial shock had given way to a burning clarity, a focus I hadn't known I possessed. My anger was a cold, precise instrument. What we unearthed was a horrifying tapestry of deceit, far more intricate and chilling than I could have imagined. Lily wasn't just Ethan's ex-girlfriend who coincidentally returned. She was his long-term partner in crime, a professional con artist with a documented history of similar scams. We found victims other unsuspecting individuals who had been lured and financially exploited and then discarded. Her M.O. was always the same charm: entrapment, financial extraction, then disappearance. We found records of her operating under multiple aliases in different cities, always with a charming male partner who would reel in the marks. The accident I was involved in, a classic tactic from their playbook. We found the man they'd paid a down on his luck, former actor who, under pressure from Rachel's investigator, confessed everything. They'd staged it, ensured the police had enough fabricated evidence, enough for plausible deniability, enough to keep me occupied, to keep me distracted and vulnerable while they pressed their financial demands. It was a perfectly executed maneuver to apply maximum pressure and extract funds designed to bleed me dry and silence me. They even had contingency plans in place in case I resisted. And the baby? Oh, the baby. That was the most sickening revelation. Rachel found out that Lily had been using an old ultrasound image, one from a previous unrelated pregnancy she'd had years ago, long before she even met Ethan. The child wasn't Ethan's, and quite possibly, it wasn't even real. The entire pregnancy was a prop in their elaborate charade, a gruesome manipulation of one of life's most sacred events, a desperate attempt to legitimize their claim and guilt-trip me into compliance. It was a testament to their depravity, a cruel joke on my lingering empathy. Then came the real bombshell, the core of Ethan's perceived success, Phoenix Capital. It wasn't a revolutionary investment firm. It was a classic, meticulously constructed Ponzi scheme, a house of cards built on the investments of unsuspecting individuals. He had been using new investor money to pay off earlier ones, creating an illusion of booming success, a stable, growing portfolio. My 30% investment? It wasn't for growth. It was for their lavish lifestyle, to keep the facade going, to fund their opulent dates and their carefully curated image. He had been planning to abscond with the funds, leaving a trail of ruined lives, empty bank accounts, and shattered dreams in his wake. We found offshore accounts, shell corporations, and a terrifyingly efficient exit strategy. He wasn't building an empire, he was building a trap. The more we uncovered, the clearer the path to revenge became. This wasn't about public shaming or petty vindictiveness. It was about strategically dismantling their carefully constructed empire, my 30% stake in Ethan's company. It was the leverage I needed, the critical piece of the puzzle. It was a golden ticket, a weapon in my hand, something I had unwittingly provided him that I would now use to destroy him. I contacted a rival investment firm, a major player in the market, that had always eyed Ethan's startup with a mixture of suspicion and grudging respect. Atlas Group was their name, and they were known for being ruthless, ambitious, and utterly devoid of sentimentality. They saw a target, and I was giving them the exact blueprint to take it down. I secured a discreet meeting with their top executives. I walked in not as a victim, but as a woman with a plan. I laid out the entire sordid story, calmly, methodically backing up every claim with every piece of meticulously gathered evidence Rachel and I had amassed. The fabricated accident details Lily's documented history as a professional con artist. Ethan's fraudulent investment practices, the clear indicators of a Ponzi scheme. I told them everything, presented them with the irrefutable proof, and watched their eyes widen with predatory interest. Then I offered them my 30% stake, not at market value, not for profit, but for a ridiculously low price. A fire sale. A gesture that showed I was not interested in personal gain, but in utter annihilation. My only condition was that they use my shares to initiate a hostile takeover and ensure Ethan's complete removal from the company. They were shrewd. They saw the opportunity immediately. They saw a chance to not only acquire a rapidly growing competitor, but to acquire it for pennies on the dollar, effectively taking it over and absorbing its assets without a lengthy, expensive hostile takeover battle. It was a strategic move, a corporate raid enabled by a desperate woman seeking justice. They didn't hesitate. The deal was done within days, sealed with quiet efficiency under a veil of corporate secrecy. My 30% was transferred to Atlas Group, and with it my destiny was once again firmly in my own hands. The chess pieces were finally in place. Checkmate. And that was the beginning of the end for Ethan. With my 30% in their hands, Atlas Group had a significant foothold. They used it to buy up more shares aggressively, discreetly from other unsuspecting investors, often at inflated prices, to quickly secure a majority stake. Ethan, caught completely off guard, blindsided by the sudden shift in ownership dynamics, lost control of his own company. He was too busy dodging Lily's demands and trying to maintain his facade to see the corporate storm brewing on the horizon. The board, now dominated by Atlas Group, swiftly moved to remove him. He was out. Kicked out of the very empire he claimed he was building for us. The irony was delicious, a bitter, satisfying taste on my tongue. His entire fraudulent career, built on lies and manipulation, collapsed like a house of cards exposed to the harsh light of reality. The final act of his downfall was almost anticlimactic in its speed. It happened during the annual Phoenix Capital shareholders meeting, a lavish affair held in a grand ballroom. Ethan, still trying to project an image of control, stood at the podium delivering a rehearsed speech about future growth. Suddenly, the doors burst open and a contingent from Atlas Group walked in, led by their CEO, a woman with a steely gaze and a predatory smile. She took the microphone, presented the overwhelming evidence of Ethan's fraud, announced his immediate termination, and declared Atlas Group's acquisition of Phoenix Capital. The room erupted into chaos. Ethan's face went ashen, his jaw dropping in disbelief. He looked like a puppet whose strings had been cut. It was a spectacle, a public execution of his carefully constructed lies. When Ethan finally pieced together what had happened, when he realized I was behind it all, he was apoplectic. He showed up at my old apartment, raging, his handsome face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated fury, veins bulging in his neck. He pounded on the door, screaming my name, demanding answers, accusing me of sabotaging him, of ruining his life. The charming veneer, the polished exterior, was completely stripped away, revealing the ugly, manipulative monster beneath. But I wasn't there. I had already moved quietly, efficiently into a new safe space, far from the wreckage of my past, far from the toxic debris of his existence. I left him a gift, though, a thick file carefully curated, tied with a simple black ribbon. It was placed prominently on the empty kitchen counter, the last thing he'd see, as the realization of his utter defeat finally dawned on him. Inside every piece of evidence, we had gathered the copies of Lily's past convictions, the fabricated accident reports, the irrefutable proof of his investment fraud, the intricate details of his various scams, even the evidence that Lily's pregnancy was a cruel hoax, all neatly organized, each document a nail in his coffin. And on top, a single stark note written in my own hand, my elegant cursive now imbued with a cold, triumphant finality. You played, you lost. The aftermath and rebirth. The fallout was swift and brutal, a public spectacle that unfolded faster than even I anticipated. Ethan's name was dragged through the mud, his face plastered across financial news channels, as the mastermind behind a massive fraud. The authorities, armed with the undeniable evidence I provided, launched a full-scale financial investigation. His startup was exposed for the sham it was leaving, a trail of devastated investors, some of whom had lost their life savings. His career, the one he claimed he needed to stabilize before marrying me, was utterly irrevocably consumed by the flames of his own greed. He was facing multiple charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, looking at a very long time behind bars. The last I heard, he was in temporary detention, awaiting trial, his empire being dismantled, its assets liquidated, and his lavish lifestyle reduced to the stark reality of prison walls. His mugshot was everywhere. The charming smile replaced by a hollow, defeated stare. Lily's family facing public humiliation and the threat of legal repercussions for their indirect involvement disowned her. The truth about her past, her extensive history of scams, and the chilling revelation that her pregnancy was a cruel hoax came out in excruciating detail. She vanished from the public eye, her once glamorous facade shattered, leaving behind a wake of ruined reputations and broken trust. Rumor has it she's on the run, a ghost in the criminal underworld, stripped of her network and her last vestiges of support, a cautionary tale whispered in the dark corners of online fraud forums. She was no longer Ethan's partner. She was just another loose end. And me, I was free. I walked away from the entire drama, from the toxic entanglement, from the suffocating grip of betrayal. My name was cleared in the hit and run. The truth of the setup was exposed, and the paid witness confessed. The initial financial loss was significant, yes, a hefty price for a devastating lesson, but the symbolic victory, the profound satisfaction of dismantling their operation, of exposing their rot, was worth more than any financial gain. My financial independence, once a source of pride, then a target for exploitation, was now a shield allowing me to rebuild, to heal, to breathe again, without the constant pressure of a lie, without the shadow of a criminal charge hanging over me. I bought a new apartment, not lavish, but peaceful, a true sanctuary. I changed my routine, reevaluated my priorities. The scars remain, of course. The bitter taste of betrayal, the raw pain of realizing how completely I was manipulated, the chilling understanding of how deep human deceit can run. It's a harsh lesson learned at a steep, soul-altering price. The trust I once so freely gave is now a precious commodity guarded fiercely. Every new person I meet, every seemingly perfect gesture, is now scrutinized with a critical eye. I don't see it as paranoia, I see it as survival. But I emerged not broken, not destroyed, but sharpened, wiser, stronger, more resilient. I learned that even in the darkest moments of deception, the power to fight back to reclaim your narrative lies within you, and that sometimes the most effective revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. They say love conquers all. But sometimes, especially when that love talks constantly about money, about building an empire and securing the future, it's nothing more than a transaction, a carefully calculated exchange, a meticulously planned fraud disguised as affection. And the only way to reclaim your self-respect, your dignity, when you've been played, when your heart and your bank account have been emptied, is to fight back with cold, hard logic, to hit them where it hurts, to dismantle the very foundations of their deceit, to expose the rotten core. Because revenge, when served with a clear mind and a strategic hand, isn't just about getting even. It's about taking your power back. It's about rebuilding your own truth from the ashes of their lies and ensuring that your story and your comeback are truly your own. What about you? Have you ever had to fight back against a betrayal that rocked your world? How did you find your strength? What was your "you played, you lost" moment? Share your story in the comments below. Let's reflect and heal together. And if you want to hear more raw, unfiltered stories of infidelity, love, and the lies people tell, remember to subscribe to Infidelity Love Lies.